2. Let's get started. Okay, this is part 2 of Planetia, Queen of Justice. Despite her ministers offering to take care of the issues of the kingdom due to her mourning, Planetia instead insisted on performing her royal duties without any delay. In the opinion of many, her way of coping with her grief. Her first royal act was... Wait. You really read that? Girl. I did that. King Yorn. What are you... Yorn had something to do with her mother's disappearance, and Planetia decided to get to the bottom of the mystery and rode to Smith Kingdom in the middle of the night, refusing to give any explanation of where she was going and what she was doing. She completed the journey in record time, sneaking into the Smith fortress less than a month later, and being received with nervous surprise and overly open arms by King Yorn the Sith. Planetia told him to cut the bull and interrogated him about his involvement in Astraeda's death, with the king first attempting to deny her claims until Planetia rolled her eyes and showed him the letter as proof. Caught in his lie, Yorn dropped to his nice persona, giving rise to a cunning, cynical smile. Your mother got what she deserved for foiling my plan. Now I suggest you scram lest you wish to share her fate, he told her. Taken by a hushed fury, Planetia retorted that he would face justice for his crimes, making Yorn laugh in her face as he let her know he didn't fear her unlike her mother, and even mockingly calling her little girl. It was then that Planetia truly showed just how much of Astraeda she had taken after. Alarmingly calm, she closed her eyes as she took the wand to her lips and uttered some intangible Hymunian words, opening them as they glowed and silently glared at her foe. She then leaned in and whispered something into his ear, to which Yorn would have reacted by letting out a ghastly cry and falling unresponsive, mumbling incoherent sentences. To this day, it's unknown what Planetia would have done. The king. Widespread rumors say it was a truth about him and his family so dark that it literally broke his mind. Others point to a simple curse. What is known is that Yorn the Sith of the Smith Kingdom was forced to abdicate soon after under the pretext of insanity and incapability of reign, with Planetia acting as a misunderstanding. As for the spell itself, it remains without a proper name, simply referred to as the open book spell by the few who know of its existence, due to its controversial nature, consisting in a complete breach of privacy for allowing one to know virtually everything about their target with just one glance. Its page on the Book of Spells was sealed, curiously done by Planetia herself. She justifies in her diary that she ultimately regretted giving into the darkness and crossing the line of morality, even if to find justice for her mother, ruling to ask the Magic High Commission for their prior authorization to use a spell, a safeguard to avoid future temptation. Planetia was allowed about a year of rest before she was forced to deal with her next crisis, her love life. Having run out of excuses for Lord Frederick's insistent pressure, she was forced to accept her fate and keep her word by announcing an official date for her wedding with Dominic Flowers. Yet, weeks before the ceremony, she was woken up in the middle of a rainy night by a knight claiming she had a visitor. As Planetia went down to the castle gates, the person she found knocking on the door was the last she expected, Alaric Flowers. Drenched, beaten, and bruised, the boy looked lost, claiming he didn't know where else to go, before breaking down in tears. Without any hesitation, Planetia took him in, granting him medical attention and a listening ear. My father and brother always blamed me for my mother's death, and in a way, I suppose I do too. From the moment I first laid eyes on you, I fell in love, but alas, you hated me. So I played along to avoid proving you wrong. When I overheard you telling Dominic you wished he'd write to you in Elfindor, knowing my brother, I knew he would never do such a thing. So I took upon myself pretending to be him in correspondence. Everything to see your smile after reading what I wrote from his office. I'd like you to know I meant every word of what I said. Spending time with you as we reached the end of our degree had only intensified my feelings, which didn't go unnoticed by my father. He told me to stay away from you and make way for Dominic, but I see the way he treats you. He doesn't appreciate you for who you are, but I do. But oh my God, I cannot speak. But I do. I was running out of time, so I had to try and fight for my justice and your happiness. So just we swapped in the agreement. My father didn't take it lightly, which brings us here. Forgive me for hiding the truth from you for so long, my queen. The young flowers confessed. The young queen was shocked, blaming herself for ignoring her intuition over the signs of Alaric's abuse and mistreatment under Frederick and Dominic years earlier. Although confused over her feelings for the boy, Planetia was determined to not let her emotions cloud her judgment. Once again, to public shock, To public shock and Frederick's outrage, she postponed her wedding another time, while offering Alaric a place to stay and support as both built a case against his father and brother, gathering documents, testimonies, and evidence. It was while investigating royal records that Planetia discovered the true reason for her engagement with Dominic, an agreement between her late mother and Lord Frederick for him to craft a new civil code inclusive for monsters. She was even more upset upon learning that Lord Frederick's Flowers had purposely delayed it over the years, denying Queen Astroida from ever seeing her project a reality and getting what he wanted, diluting his blood with that of the Queen. The judgment took place in the bureaucracy of magic in 1117. An entire scandal at its time, this Planetia not even giving the accused the privilege of being tried in their home seats. The Queen herself presided over the trial as judge, and Alaric acted as the prosecutor, with Frederick and Dominic opting to defend themselves. It was noteworthy for being not only the first time that a Queen of Muni performed such a role, but also that one of her ministers had been publicly condemned. It also marked the debut of Planetia's Golden Vision spell after Frederick and Dominic refused to admit their crimes, even under oath, and the effect of the Veroso potion, for which many believed they had found a way to counter its effects. Accounts from the jury claimed that Planetia's eyes would have glowed like stars, forcing the truth out of the defendants, whilst under their amber light. The result? Frederick and Dominic were found guilty, both being sentenced to banishment and stripped of their titles. However, not before Planetia forced Frederick, as his last official act, to keep his word and humiliatingly sign the new Union civil code she had crafted to fulfill her mother's wish. Lord Frederick was also made to consent Alaric's replacement. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I cannot speak right now. Lord Frederick was also made to consent Alaric's replacement of Dominic as Planetia's fiancé in the agreement, as well as naming his youngest as his successor, who then became Lord Flowers in a way. Queen Astroida's original deal was honored, just as Planetia had intended. Speaking of the new civil code, the document served its own attention, in addition to finally being granted the same rights as their Munin counterparts. In the official legislature Monsters are allowed to take part in the army and higher-ranking offices, marrying human citizens freely and offered equal pay and access to all areas of the capital, all while their territories cleaned and renewed as promised by the previous queen. Planetia also insisted on reviewing and tightening many of the previous laws, especially those related to hate crimes penalties, and discrimination amongst her citizens, whose incidences I think it's supposed to be incidents greatly dropped in her reign. 1117 would still bear witness to the implementation of other policies from Planetia under her goal of reforming the justice system of the Butterfly Kingdom. Months after the trial, Planetia introduced the Child Protective Services, which many scholars believe was to prevent other children from going through what Alaric did. In a more controversial companion decree, she banned the death penalty, the highest sentence for crimes committed in the lands of Casa Butterfly, being life imprisonment, if not banishment, from her reign mostly on. Yet by far Planetia's most important measure was her reduction of wait times, necessary bureaucratic paperwork to facilitate the acquiring of butterfly citizenship. Besides the renewing of the design of the identity cards, no longer exclusive to humans, butterflies' population rose exponentially as a result, reaching about 10 million by the end of 1118. Regardless, most history books fail to recognize the true purpose of this measure, as there is a lesser-known reason for Planetia's promotion of the new personal document. Popularly known as the cocoon, it was a system introduced alongside the magic-infused cards, the biggest database in the history of the kingdom. It greatly simplified census matters, tracking the accurate citizen count and information such as careers, riding licenses, domestic situations, and criminal records. This last aspect proved critical to aid in the prosecution and trialing of felons. It arrives by historians to be Planetia's ultimate goal with the cocoon. In fact, with Lord Flowers' blessing, throughout her reign, Planetia assumed the role of the supreme judge, presiding herself over the most heinous trials and focusing the judicial power on the cocoon for the first time in history. Despite this, House Flowers still played a prominent role, their highest-ranking members serving as the Queen's Supreme Court Counsel, and Alaric serving as the Crown Prosecutor of the Kingdom, often alongside Planetia in judgments. It wouldn't be the last time a butterfly queen concentrated other state powers in herself. However, as the future will tell, it wouldn't end so well for her descendants. In any case, being all service and gaining experience as Queen Judge prompted Planetia to realize the world was painted in shades of gray. Not everything is what it seems, she claimed. She came to adapt to this new mindset to each case, facing it with absolute fairness and impartiality. Gaining recognition for such. That being said, what she, and consequently her reign, became best known for is her use of the golden eye spell in Vorosso's place during her trials. Even nowadays, historians debate on the reason for the Queen's abandonment of the truth serum. Although she never gave any satisfaction, it's speculated it was due to her previous experience with some criminals' abilities to nullify its effects, with the golden vision spell lasting longer and being more effective. Either that or the more theorized dependency of Planetia, which, whatever the case, remains unconfirmed. A curious, lesser-known fact about the golden vision spell is that it was extremely aggressive on the user's sight. Planetia was forced to wear a band around her eyes for hours after its use, in order to properly recover, taking longer as she got older. It's the source of the common depiction with her eyes covered, their true color even getting lost in the records of history. Back to the story, Planetia's wise judge fame eventually spread to other dimensions. She was often summoned to judge trials in interdimensional Supreme Court, being the one behind the incarceration of felons such as Vilgax the Conqueror and the Mauler twins. It was also thanks to her influence that the crystal dimension was discontinued as the ultimate punishment for punishment destination, introducing the null dimension, an alternative where the most dangerous criminals would be exiled, something which Romulus didn't object to due to his crush on Planetia at the time. Ah yes, that brings us back to Planetia's romantic relationships. Being technically an arranged marriage, it is often assumed her relationship with Alaric was based solely on duty, which couldn't be further from the truth. For better or worse, he was who Planetia had fallen in love with over their letters, the most romantic, believing they would have ended together regardless of the contract's existence. Still, there isn't consensus as to when exactly Planetia realized her feelings for her fiancé and truly took the relationship to a romantic status. Many claiming it had been a result of their rapprochements investigating Lord Frederick and on their time together in court over the years. In any case, starting in mid-1120, there's an increase of reports depicting Queen and Lord Flowers together, attending important events and even spending after hours in Flowers' capital. The announcement of their wedding the following year came as a surprise to most, notable for being the happiest and most relaxed Planetia had been seen in public. In the words of Lady Fabrice Cross, unfortunately fate has had other plans for the newlyweds' well-deserved honeymoon in Paradisia, as it was cut short after Planetia received a letter with word of armed conflicts in the Phantom Isles of the ancient Union Empire. Those islands are nothing but trouble, King Alaric reports in his personal records his wife told him as they returned home. Planetia immediately sailed towards her forbidden territory, intent on solving the problem herself at once. But when she got there, she was faced with two armies battling it out on her land at the south of the archipelago, one carrying the laurel banner and the other the Florence coat. All witness testimonies point that Planetia would have attempted a peaceful verbal resolution to get the soldiers to drop their weapons, however, had been ignored by both factions. At that moment, irritated by that her pleas were disregarded, tired of the island's issues, and most of all, furious her honeymoon had been interrupted, Planetia awoke her butterfly form, revealing some hitherto hidden demon features such as claws and a tail. Claws and a tail. Now, with everyone's attention, the Queen gravely demanded to speak with their monarchs, Octavia, Laurel, and Luca Florence. A generation and almost 30 years later, the New World's League was reunited, albeit not in the circumstances one would expect. When questioning her allies on the presence of their armies on her part of the archipelago, Planetia was told they thought she had abandoned it, and given no borders had been established in the Phantom Pact, felt at will to occupy. They also admitted their territorial disputes had begun years earlier with their parents, the North and Center Islands. No longer having Queen Astraea's imposing figure to keep them in line, visibly frustrated, Planetia solved the quarrel by repeating what her mother had done. In negotiation with Octavia and Luca, she signed a second iteration of the Phantom Pact, this time equally dividing the land between the three and establishing proper borders, preventing the existence of any further future conflict, or so she hoped. Even so, as precautionary measure, Planetia lifted her ban on the Phantom Islands and scheduled regular surveillance expeditions, rumored by many to be disguised colonization efforts by the Queen in attempts to honor her mother's will and make something out of the land. A noble intention, to be sure, but a pointless one, just like it had been reported by the previous attempts of her allies. It was one just like it was thwarted by the barren soil's inability to grow crops and settlers' weird feelings about the place. Taking the loss, Planetia shelved the project definitely, unaware it would be revived by less than a century later. Planetia's chagrin over her failure to complete her mother's legacy would be compensated when she found herself pregnant in 1124, giving birth to her daughter to her heiress, Aura Vera, in Corn of that same year. The princess had purple hair and pink eyes, wearing pink shells on her cheeks, but was soon revealed to have been born mute. Aura's muteness will be properly addressed in her chapter, but to this day there's a rumor it had been Celestia's punishment for Planetia's abusive use of truth spells over the years. Her Majesty oversaw the truth so much that her daughter was unable to speak it, was often said. In 1126, Planetia's second daughter, Princess Cortaria, was born. She had her blue hair and Alaric's pink eyes, and half moons on her cheeks. From the moment Cortaria's birth, Planetia had been suggested/bombarded with questions from her court and castle staff alike if she would be replacing Aura as heiress. Indignant at their lack of faith in her firstborn, the Queen fiercely defended Princess Aura's rights, rebuking the inquiries to not refuse incapability with inability. Planetia was a stern but fair mother, as one would expect. Although she attempted to provide her daughters with an equal amount of attention between her busy schedule, Aura's condition and need of additional support would ultimately lead Planetia to play a more protective role with her eldest, which wasn't always a good thing. Contrary to popular belief, there was never any resentment between the Butterfly sisters related to Planetia's increased concern over Aura, their relationship being dealt with in the following biography. In 1138, Planetia handed the royal wand to Aura. It was from there that problems began. Less than a year later, the royal family had a big fright when the Queen's sight, after using the Golden Vision spell, took over a month to return. Following Lady Fabrice's advice, Planetia attempted to limit its use over the years. However, the damage had already been done. Slowly but surely, her vision began blurring out, even vanishing for minutes at a time. Planetia disobeyed her medical orders and resorted to the Golden Vision spell in her desperation to convict another father accused of abusing his child. Unfortunately, this time her vision wouldn't bounce back. What many saw as an unfortunate accident had in fact been expected by the Queen, who, according to King Alaric, would have later admitted to him that she didn't regret sacrificing her eyesight. "The price for justice is never light," she told him. Despite her blindness greatly hindering her ability to perform her royal duties, Planetia would have endured it to keep at service in order to buy her daughter more time away from the worries of Queen. It took Princess Aura herself writing a frank letter convincing her mother she could no longer arrange for Planetia to agree to abdicate, officially ending her rule in 1141. Anyone who thinks Planetia had a peaceful and restful retirement is wrong. While certainly not as burdened as during her time as Queen, Planetia would still occasionally serve as judge, even commenting her blindness came as a blessing. She had time to meet her first royal granddaughter from Aura, a star named Estelina, born in 1146, and followed the gestation of her first grandson, whose birth she hoped to attend had the goddess not had other plans. Planetia Butterfly unexpectedly passed away due to a heart attack in 1149 at the age of 51. She was buried in the crypts with her ancestors after a fortnight of mourning, being finally able to rest in peace. Planetia, using the Golden Vision spell during the trial of flowers versus flowers at 1117. Planetia's bio that we just finished. Last is Aura. I'm very interested to deal with Aura because of her muteness. I feel like that will make the story way more interesting, especially since her future husband is able to love her despite her her inability to communicate easily is what's really heartwarming to me. But anyways, I just hope that Shy gives us some sign language to really feed off of, because I really love how he's integrating these modern mechanics into his future queens. Well, thanks a lot, and I cannot wait for Aura. Bye!